What? This is so fun. Thank you guys so much for coming. This is awesome. Um, it's really cool to see we're talking about the future of the Calgary tech ecosystem. Uh, and I feel like over the last like 30 minutes, I ran into everyone I care about in the Calgary tech ecosystem. So awesome to have you all part of this conversation, and so thrilled that you're able to make it out. Um, as a quick intro on myself, my name is Philip. I run Tech Thursday. We, it, the one person who loves their work. We used to run our events through Neo Financial in Winnipeg and Calgary, but a year ago we spun out the event series into its own company, and have since launched Winnipeg, or sorry, Ottawa and Edmonton as well. And it's all entirely supported by our sponsors. So I know Nicole mentioned some of our sponsors, but just wanted to give a deep thank you for allowing us to do our work and continuing these events here in Calgary, but also across Canada. So maybe a quick round of applause again for the sponsor. Okay, that's enough plugging and thinking. Guys, I'm going to let these folks introduce themselves. But it's a little bit awkward to like introduce yourself and then immediately everyone cheers and applauds. So Clayton, I'm going to do a little introduction for you. Clayton was too loud. Clayton was the CEO of On Topical until just on Monday they announced that they were acquired by Savra. And I think in Calgary and in Canadian tech in general, we don't do a good enough job celebrating our wins. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to make it very clear that this is a celebration of Clayton and his team. And so Gerardo, maybe we could get those champagne glasses up there. Yes. Come on. There we go. Good start.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. And then we'll send one over here to Clayton's co-founder Derek. So cheers to an enormous success, but also the hard work to come.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, girls. Cheers. Oh, thank you.
Cheers. I think you guys can do better than that. Come on. This is the most success you can get as an entrepreneur. Come on. Yeah. Congrats. Yeah. There you go. Maybe introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah, what a star.
Oh. Look. Flick it up. Yeah.
There we go. What a stars.
Come on.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that, Phil. I feel like everyone should probably get a toast. So, like, it's really hard working in a startup. So,
Yeah.
there's lots to celebrate along the way. We just, happen to have an event this week, but it was really cool that everyone's here. So happy to tell you all about what we do and the deal as well.
Yeah.
But I think you summed it up well, so I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get into it a bit more.
Hey, so just an intro. Base Clayton, Derek, which is awesome. What a start. So I'm Crystal Phillips. I am now going on 3 months as the senior director at OSIF, which stands for the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. And previously, I was in the venture capital world. I was on the founding team of Thin Air Labs. Before that, I started a charity in neuroscience that I am still the chair of the board on, and we fund research a lot at UC, mostly UC, but also in 12 universities across the country. And before that, which is what actually drew me to Calgary in the first place, for our absolute world-class sport performance facilities, I came here as a speed skater. Hey.
Okay, so as the weird person on the panel, my name's Jyoti Gondek. I'm the mayor of Calgary. I'm not a speed skater, so I'm in awe of you. That's cool. I could be a speed skater. Okay, I'm going to learn how to speed skate. I did not have a great big deal go through on Monday, so congratulations.
I was never mayor.
You were never, okay. So we all have our part to play. This is great.
You belong. No imposter syndrome. You belong.
Exactly. But you know what's interesting? We talk a lot about startups, and I will tell you that I had what you would call a startup back in the day. When I was in university doing my master's degree, I wanted to do a thesis on corporate social responsibility. And the university I was at the time said, "Oh, sweetie, that's not a thing." And I said, I think it is a thing. And they said, "No, corporations are not doing good things. So we don't know that we can back that." And I said, "Okay." And I ended up in Calgary. And I went to the U of C and I said, "Look, I'm working full time, but I really want to finish this degree. Here's my idea." And there was a professor named Bill Zorman who said, "I think that's a great idea." And he took me on. I had to repeat an entire year of coursework, but I got to do the thesis that I wanted to do. And I actually did it with Nexon at the time. And I looked at whether or not their version of being socially responsible was something that their stakeholders also agreed with. And it was an amazing opportunity. And when I finished my master's, I started a consulting company doing that exact work. So I understand what it's like to have an idea that people say is terrible and you know is good, and you stick to it and you see it through. So I have a kinship with all of you, and I'm just excited to be here today.
Thanks so much for joining. Give her.
Cool. Just to break down a little bit so you guys can follow along the journey with us in terms of what we're going to be talking about. The large title is The Future of the Calgary Tech Ecosystem. So we're going to start with where are we now, then get into what does the future look like and what sort of trajectory are we on and what are some of the elements that we can control that can accelerate that trajectory. And then we're maybe going to spend some time talking about the ideal city. What does the ideal Calgary look like? And then we're going to flip it to you guys for some questions at the end. So that's what we have on the agenda. Maybe, Crystal, I wanted to flip it over to you. I'll give a bit of background on some statistics. Since 2017, we've seen 780% growth in our venture capital funding here in Calgary, which is remarkable. Also, 64,000 people now work in tech across the city, which is amazing. But Crystal, maybe you were just previously at Thin Air. You're now at OSIF, and so have a bit of a understanding of what the OSIF investments have done and what you're seeing in the city. Where are we? Maybe bring us up to speed on where the Calgary tech ecosystem is.
Yeah, good question. So first of all, I'm not going to take all the credit considering I'm brand new at OSIF. So this is all everybody else at OSIF, all of their hard work. But in 2018, the city of Calgary did something really innovative, which was they directed $100 million towards standing up the OSIF fund. It's a public fund that actually makes investments to grow and diversify the economy. 93 million of that, or ish, my teammate here can correct me with the exact numbers, has been allocated. And because of all of the success with that deployment, supporting nearly 1,000 companies, helping to create over 3,000 jobs in the city, diversifying the economy, and really kickstarting the innovation ecosystem, which if anybody has been here long enough, I mean, 5 to 10 years ago, it was honestly non-existent beyond our oil and gas sector. So kudos to OSIF for having the innovative, risk-taking mindset to stand up this fund. And because of all of its success, as you may have heard, it was just a few months ago that the city of Calgary, thank you, Mayor, decided to recapitalize with another $60 million, which gave me my new job.
There you go. Boom. This is your boss. It's a key stage.
An investor.
Mayor Gondek, maybe over to you on what did you see, because it was a large initiative from you and the city of Calgary to really focus on OSIF and this recapitalization. What did you see from the tech sector that really maybe gave you inspiration or certainty that this was a sector to back and that OSIF was the way to do it? And curious if you have any thoughts on what was the public sentiment and were you reacting to the public sentiment, or was this a big bet that you guys took on the tech sector by recapitalizing OSIF?
Well, it was pretty interesting in 2018 on council where we had a bit of a divide where those of us that believed that this type of an incentive would absolutely draw incredible talent and businesses to our city were competing against those who said you're picking winners and losers and you're giving money to corporations. And it was a very interesting debate, and I'm really glad that it passed. And so as we were tracking what was happening with the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, we ran into a little bit of a roadblock that I think all of you hit as well in March of 2020 with the pandemic. And what's interesting is how many companies were able to succeed during the pandemic because of technology, and how many startups were really able to dig in and do amazing things because they saw gaps and they saw opportunities. So really, pandemic was a miserable period for all of us, and there was so many people that lost so much during that time. People's mental health was impacted. We lost friends and family members. But you know, one of the good things that came out of it is our ability to recognize that innovation would get us through. So coming out of the pandemic and becoming the mayor, I focused very heavily on how we could keep that momentum going. And I've had the incredible privilege of accompanying folks from Calgary Economic Development on the missions that they've gone on. And my favorite is to go to Toronto. And going to Toronto for Collision, and you'll see why it's my favorite, going to Collision and being able to talk to folks like you who are working over there and saying, really? This is where you want to live? How long are you commuting? What kind of opportunities do you have? We've been able to poach so many people from out east because we have a better city. And I'm not, maybe I am taking shots at Toronto, but we do have a better city. We've got more opportunity. We've got greater affordability relative to what they're seeing. And we actually care about people's success. I really want all of you in this room to succeed and prosper. And it's that kind of mindset that I think sets our city apart from others. I've also been down to San Francisco.
Yeah. Is it don't cry over spilled milk, but you can cry over spilled champagne. Yeah. That's right. We're gonna need another one.
That's a t-shirt.
That's a t-shirt. Yeah.
So I went down to San Francisco with Calgary Economic Development for an ag tech conference. And it made no sense to me that it was in San Fran. It should be up here where we actually, do agriculture really well. So we managed to get the two founders to come up here, and they came to the Stampede Tarp auction. And they were my guests. And like 2 minutes into it, they went, "What's happening right now? Did someone just offer $100,000 to have a tarp on this wagon?" I said, "Yep." "And how long is this up?" 10 days. "And how many people see it?" And I said, "Like a lot, over 1 million." And they said, "So how much money is going to be raised?" And we sat and watched. It was last year, and it was a ton of cash. It was like 1.38 million or something. It was the best draw that we've ever seen. And it opened their eyes to who we are and what we can do. So those kind of opportunities are an absolute privilege for me to be able to defend why the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund exists. So when it came to recapitalizing, it was Councillor Andre Chabot and I, who serve on the OSIF board, who went to our council colleagues and said, we need to keep investing. And I'll say one more thing. In our city, if I give you clean tech as the example, within clean tech, 51% of the founders are people who were never even thinking of doing this. They're first-time founders. 26% were born outside this country, and 21 to 22% are women. And when you consider that women only have access to 2% of the capital that's out there, something amazing is happening in our city that allows them to succeed. That's why we need to keep reinvesting in things like this.
Yeah, awesome. Clayton, I'm going to get you to pile on this shit on Toronto train. Yeah, please. You moved to Calgary from Toronto. I'm mostly just asking for your personal take on what's it been like? You've been here 4 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
What's it been like moving to Calgary, living here, working in the Calgary tech ecosystem? What's that process been like?
So I cheated a little bit. I am originally from Calgary.
Oh, okay.
I was out at Toronto for like 20 years.
Okay.
So it was a long time. And it was great to come back. 2022. I probably didn't have a good understanding of what was happening in tech when I decided to move back. I kind of wanted to move back for quality of life, but was quickly pleasantly surprised with everything that was happening out here. One example is just around collaboration, I think, versus Toronto. Like when I was moving back, I sent a cold LinkedIn message to Doug Schweitzer. He was the minister of the economy.
Love it.
It's like on a Sunday morning. And he got back to me within 15 minutes, like no idea who I was. So yeah, I had to connect you with some people, and sure enough, he followed up. And wow, that would never happen in Ontario.
Yeah.
And it, you come back to Calgary, you start to immerse yourself. The collaboration, the networking, everyone's willing to help each other out. Events like this, I find like in Toronto, it can be much more competitive. Everyone's competing for talent, competing for capital. And that's something special. I think you talk about kind of the Calgary difference or advantage. Like, I think that's a real difference that may have that we have to maintain even as the, call it, tech ecosystem matures, because obviously the ecosystem in Toronto is a lot bigger. But yeah, I feel like coming back, obviously, the history of Calgary with the energy industry in the 60s, 70s, 80s, there was a small group of people kind of building up the industry.
Yeah.
And to what it is today, I feel like tech is in a very similar place now, where there's a lot of energy happening around building out this industry. And one day we're going to have some very big companies in Calgary as a result.
Yeah, that's awesome. On maybe a similar trend, but shifting towards the future, what we've seen across the industry, across Canadian tech, but also across North American tech more generally, is we've seen sort of the acquisition market dry up. We've seen the IPO market dry up for tech companies. And so and in Calgary specifically, though you've seen 780% growth in VC capital investments, you have not seen anywhere near 780% growth in exits or returned capital to investors. So I'm curious your take on, you have just sold on Topical. Presumably you have some Canadian LPs on the cap table. What does that mean to have those investors have their capital returned? What will it mean for that money going back into the ecosystem, for your employees now who've gone through an exit and what they'll go through? And also maybe, now this is like 500 questions, but also maybe if you didn't see the news article, when Topical was purchased by Savra, who's primarily owned by KKR, which KKR is one of the biggest private equity firms in North America. What does it mean to have private capital like that here now in Calgary?
Yeah. Well, I have two LPs sitting next to you here.
Oh,
I guess maybe everyone sort of through the OSIF fund, but OSIF invested in a fund called the Accelerate Fund, managed by Yaletown, the Accelerate Fund 3. And they were an investor, on Topical. So that was great. They were early believers. One of the things I like about the Accelerate Fund model is the initial capital that they give you has to be matched by private capital as well. So, you need to convince some angels or some private capital to give you some money before they give you some money too. So we're an exit for OSIF for the Accelerate Funds.
yeah. Calgary citizens.
So that was fantastic, and even Accelerate Fund was one of the early conversations we had, and then it turned into other conversations. So I think we ultimately got our other VCs from the commitment from Accelerate. So Rhino and Graphite were other investors. I think it's really important to see liquidity events in the city for founders, for employees, for shareholders and VCs. Because then that gets kind of recycled back into the ecosystem. We're really happy with, I think we wouldn't have been talking to KKR had it not been for their portfolio company, Savra, who, wanted to bring on Topical together, with that company. But wow, like we were seeing these meetings with KKR can be Calgary, or I can't believe we're talking to like this enormous private equity firm. And I don't know if you saw in the announcement, but one of the cool things about the transaction is they want to like really double, triple down on Calgary. We're going to build an AI center of excellence through Sabra as a whole. So this is like an idea backed by KKR. They recognize the talent pool in Calgary. And so we're making a huge investment here. We're going to continue to hire a lot of people as a result. So to have that kind of recognition from a really large, like one of the most sophisticated investors in the world, I think is a huge vote of confidence for the city.
Man, that's impressive. Yeah. And I think also you have you can chime in or not, but you kind of have also so many examples of tech hubs formed as a result of successful exits. You have like PayPal, you have LinkedIn, that all of a sudden you have one successful exit. It provides some capital to all the employees who know how to start these incredible companies or who have been there through fast growth companies. They go off and start their own companies. And you have, PayPal obviously formed SpaceX and all of Elon's companies and Founder Fund and everything that came out and I guess the dark side of like Palantir and but some incredible companies from there. So hopefully Ontopico is another example of the start of greasing the wheel or a catalyzer for having some of your employees maybe go off and start their own thing.
Yeah, I mean the Peter Thiels and David Saxes and Elon Musk's that came out of PayPal, the PayPal market, like that's amazing. But the reality is like we're not gonna have a ton of multi-billion dollar exits. I think it's important for everyone to recognize that there's great wins in like $100 million exits or $50 million exits or building something up from scratch and then having a company acquire it because they're not as advanced from an innovation point of view is a huge win. Because like the reality is if we all believe that we're going to be massive unicorns, then we're going to be disappointed. So I think it's better to get some velocity in terms of the financing and the number of exits as opposed to kind of like shoot for the moon on everyone. But you're right. Like I think the idea of the capital getting recycled back into the community is super important to keep everything going.
Yeah. Let's talk about Attabotics. So Attabotics, unfortunately, recently laid off a large percentage of their staff and going through restructuring. Maybe give me your take on the future of the Calgary ecosystem when some of these more negative events happen.
Yeah, I think what's sad is how negative the story is about Attabotics. I actually still see a lot of successes in Attabotics. In fact, it was one of the investments of OSIF. And when we talk to the board, when we talk amongst ourselves and the team, and we debrief the Attabotics investment, we asked ourselves, would we have invested had we known this? Maybe not had we known this, but at the time, knowing the metrics that they were hitting, the growth that they were achieving, absolutely we would have still invested in Attabotics. Attabotics grew at a scaling rate. They attracted and actually upskilled a lot of talent, especially in the tech ecosystem. And guess what? If we took a long-term vision at an ecosystem level perspective of Attabotics, all of that talent is now going to be dispersed in the ecosystem so that when an AI center of excellence and another scaling company is here looking for that kind of talent, which I would argue is something that we need in this province, we have this like right talent that's got experience in a fast growing company, has experience in the unwinding of a company and the drama associated with that. That is all really good experience. And I think there's a lot that we can do with that in the city. And we need to start looking at this from an ecosystem perspective, maybe not as the individual investors. But I think all movement is good movement. I think that's a much better story than nothing is happening and there's just tumbleweeds in the city. So,
can I add something to that?
Yeah, Julie.
The thing that I would like to add to that is, remember when we went through boom and bust cycles and energy was the only thing anybody ever talked about? How many EPCMs and consultancies and energy companies went under when we were in a bust cycle, right? And it was common to see companies get swallowed up. It was common to see some of them not make it. But we kept taking a chance on energy because we believed in it. Just because Attabotics didn't make it farther than they did doesn't mean it was a failure. It means it was a point in time where they did something amazing and set the bar for how we do that kind of work using technology. And they didn't last forever, but sometimes things aren't meant to last forever, especially in technology and innovation. Sometimes an idea is incredible and it shifts the way we view the world. And I think that's what we've got to look at. Not to say that I don't wish they could have been around longer, but let's take away what they managed to do that influenced how we look at the world differently now.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you want to add to it? Yeah, sure.
Add some too. I totally agree because it's something that comes to mind is well, first of all, we've had a bunch of people from Autobotics that we're talking to, which is terrific because we have some roles that we want to fill. But there's this example I think of is Bench Accounting in Vancouver that went through the same thing like 6 months ago over the Christmas break, and we just looked up on LinkedIn. We said, I wonder if there's anyone at Bench that works in Calgary. And there was a handful of people, and we reached out to one of them, and sure enough, they were looking. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity and renewal in those types of stories.
Yeah. Okay. We had a panel here earlier in the year on the productivity crisis in Canada. And one of the takes was we as a Canadian culture have to stop looking at failure as a failure. Like in the States, if you fail or you go bankrupt, it's almost like a vote of confidence. Or if you're an employer, you look at someone who went out and tried something like that and said you are now so much more interesting to me to hire. Whereas in Canada, often we look at those folks who then hit the job market after trying and not succeeding and go oh, black mark, we don't want to, we don't want you to work with us. Right. And I think in general, we just have to shift the narrative around taking these big risks and not necessarily hitting the outcomes that are preferred. That's still being a very big win. And Chris, I love the way you put it of that's better than nothing happening at all. Right. Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Yes. Yes. But maybe over to you, Mayor Gondek. I'm curious to shift gears a little bit. Maybe blue sky, vision sky, or vision board. What does zooming out 10 years from now, the Calgary tech ecosystem look like? Maybe what's it like? What's its percentage contribution to our GDP as a city? And what is the role of the municipal government in helping to catalyze the growth of the sector?
The role of the municipal government is to help sectors thrive and to make sure that we are providing the services and the market confidence to allow sectors to survive and thrive, and to know that we are the strongest tech workforce in Canada right now is a pretty big kudos to all of you who are absolutely crushing it in what you do. So we can do this. We've got this. But let's be creative in how we do it. So one of the things that I look at goes to your point about productivity. So we are 2 decades behind in our productivity in Canada. So how can we ramp that up? There's a lot of things we can do. One of the major investments that the city is making right now is in a land play on the southeast side of town. There's a little area called Shepherd, and there's a company called Shepherd Development Corporation, and they want to create a rail-served hub. And this is such a great idea because the CPKC line runs right by their land. And what they want to do is offer spur lines off of that main line to companies who need rail cars to come in and drop off materials and upload finished product that can be shipped throughout North America. Because remember, CPKC now goes Canada to the US to Mexico. And by tying into other lines, we can also go east-west across the nation, something that we haven't done well in a very long time. So this was an opportunity for us. And what happened with that ask from Shepherd Development Corporation is the city of Calgary was asked to annex those lands, so to bring them into the city, because we had the ability to service those lands, to put in the water, the wastewater, the roads, all that stuff. And I became mayor at that point, and I talked to my colleagues in Rocky View County, and I said, look, we've been doing this forever, and for the last 20 years, we've been fighting with each other. Y'all started a great logistics and supply chain hub up in Balzac. You've been eating our lunch for 20 years. Can we work together? I don't want to annex this from you. I want to create a business deal. So we actually created the first joint venture business deal structure between 2 municipalities in this nation. And it is a risk in, reward out kind of a model. So whatever percentage we put in, we get back from the tax uplift. Same thing goes for Rocky View County. But here's the amazing part of this land. It's not just that rail-served hub. It is an opportunity for industrial lands that ring this land. We can get back to manufacturing. We have not done manufacturing well in Canada, in a long time. And manufacturing now is different than it used to be. And when you think of the automation and you think of the tech requirements, we could be leaders. This could not just be the strongest inland port in Western Canada. This could be the strongest inland port in North America if we get this right. And if we incorporate, data centers and AI centers into that, we can also use the waste heat for energy. So it's really that whole circular economy argument. But you got to be a pretty big thinker and a big believer in things like this. The city of Calgary and Rocky View County were big thinkers and big believers. And as a result of that, there's great things that we can do. And it is a project of national significance. And that's the kind of play that you need to make. Because ultimately, you all expect us to pick up your trash, to fill your potholes, to make sure you have clean drinking water. But we can't do any of that without a strong tax base. Moves like that give us a strong base. Moves like the downtown conversion program give us a strong tax base. So you've got to be able to think in economics terms when you are a governor of the city, but you also have to understand the core services you have to provide. So I just see tremendous opportunity. And I'll add one last thing. When we think about infrastructure, we always think about the basics, right? The roads, the pipes, all of that. No one's been thinking about the fiber. No one's been thinking about how to enable technology. On this project, we are absolutely considering that. So we are finally getting to the place that all of you are already at.
That's awesome. Crystal, over to you to talk a little bit about OSIF's recapitalization. So $60 million to be deployed over the next 4 years, $15 million a year. What are the investments that you guys are looking to make? But also curious about Mayor Gondek. You had mentioned when in 2018 the critics were saying you guys are picking winners and losers through OSIF. How are you guys choosing who is getting this capital and accessing this capital at OSIF, and maybe what's the strategic sort of background behind the OSIF investments?
This is an exciting announcement, and isn't it?
Whoa. We can't have any more.
Yeah. It's exciting to speak to what's next for OSIF because there's, like I spoke to before, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of great wins from the past. We're going to continue that momentum to help create jobs, support cities. One new factor with how we're strategically thinking of spending this money is based on a lot of research that this city has done on which sectors do we have in this city where we have a right to win, which sectors where we have infrastructure, talent, where there's momentum. My office is next to someone's who they look 50 years out of what is the city and the world going to look like, and where do we need to be to not just be reactive, but really proactive about positioning ourselves so that we can be global leaders in certain sectors. If I'm sure many of you can guess some of those sectors: agriculture, renewable energy, transportation and logistics, even the creative industries, and my personal bias and love, which is life sciences and health. So and I forgot to mention aerospace and defense, which is like a whole new world I'm learning about. The other really cool opportunity about this is there's a lot of cross-sector collaboration. You take life sciences alone, and what's good for human health is also good for sport. It's also good for animal health. It's also good for environmental health. And so being really intentional about helping find programs to find that would create that cross-sector overlap, make sure that there's peer-to-peer support within a sector, but also cross-sector, so we can all learn from each other. And along with these plans are going to be physical brick and mortar hubs and platforms, including the platforms would be sector agnostic. We have Quantum City, we have Platform Calgary, and now we're even looking at an AI platform. And like how deals get done, golfing with Clayton, we even talked about how we could collaborate on what that would look like between their future plans. And that is such a Calgary thing to happen. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to help steward that capital and see like the physical hubs come together that we'll all be able to visit and be a part of and hopefully work in.
Yeah, cool. For that to be more Calgary, though, it would have had to have taken place at the TARP auction. So Calgary. Clayton, let's talk about the sexy topic of RFPs. Oh yeah, we've talked a lot about what your company just went through, but not about what your company does. And so you guys help companies bid on RFPs, which you might have to tell the audience the acronym because I don't know it.
Yeah. Request for proposal.
Request for proposal. But my question is, and sorry to cut you off, but my question is, when we talk about productivity, there's been a lot of conversation about how is the government at all levels procuring Canadian tech companies to do this work. So how does your company help Canadian tech companies win some of these large contracts, and also how do you think the government can choose Canadian tech better?
Yeah. So Sabra, which Untouchable is now part of, is really two different divisions. One is what they call the buyer division, and they're serving government agencies. They're helping government to issue RFPs when they're looking for vendors, manage contracts, vendor management, et cetera. So they help governments buy this. The supplier division, which I now run and Untouchable is part of, and Derek runs product for, helps companies to connect with government to find those opportunities. So the way that that's been done traditionally is the government will, they want to buy something, they'll put out an RFP, request for proposal, and companies will bid and they'll pick the best bid. Now that traditionally has been difficult because you're kind of competing with companies that all get access to that RFP at the same time. And sometimes there's only 4 weeks to respond. So how do you win?
Yeah.
And so the mayor and council and committees within local government, or even at the provincial and state level, there's all these meetings that take place, and they're producing agendas for those meetings and minutes, and sometimes there's video and budgets. So there's all this content that's produced. And of course, they talk about upcoming purchases and projects, like, whatever it might be. So what we do is we collect all that information and try to find those early opportunities for companies so that they can get ahead of it, build a relationship with the city. So when the RFP does come out and the city wants to build a new bridge or something to do with the LRT, there's a bunch of companies that already know about that project, and it gives them a better chance of winning. So what Untouchable did was we could go out and collect millions of pages a week, if you can believe it, of this government content, and use AI to filter through it and help these companies win. So that's the idea with Sabra, is it a company that's just dedicated to the government procurement market, which is enormous.
Incredible. I like it. Together, it makes sense for KKR. I feel like KKR would be that deep on thinking about how these two companies fit together. Mayor Gondek, from your perspective, what does both the municipal government, but at all levels, need to see from Canadian and local tech companies in order for these companies to win some of the contracts and bids, so that some of our startups have access to the government as their first customer, or as one of their customers?
Well, the whole request for proposal process and the whole procurement process is a little bit clunky and dated, and governments are giant lumbering beasts. So we are the exact opposite of what you are. You are nimble, you're responsive, you're eager, you're excited, you're hungry. And as a government, we are sort of like, we've always done it this way, and to change that, oh my God, we would have to change this.
We need to talk.
Oh yeah, we would have to change this policy, and Ben over in accounting would have to do it differently, and Michelle over in payroll, like, oh, you guys, I don't know. And so we really start this churn of there's no possible way we could change. We're too big, and we've done it this way for too long. But I disagree. I very respectfully disagree with that. And so I've been pushing, my colleagues have been pushing, and we actually did something interesting. Because what used to happen is, if you in any way had any kind of an interaction with someone at the City of Calgary, like Proper C Corporation, then you were disqualified from the RFP process because you had an in, or you had tried to lobby or influence, which I think is just so strange because here I am hanging out with all of you, learning more about what you're doing. I should be able to go to our people and say, oh, wow, this problem that you have, we can totally solve it by using this company. And then they could say, okay, maybe we'll use that company, maybe we'll use a different one. Let's go put out an RFP and everyone is eligible to apply because I'm not influencing you. I'm just giving you an idea. So we've got the Wave Center now is what they call it. We give everything names. It's the tech center. It's where you can come with your ideas and the city will give you some space to try them out. And that also shows us what you're working on, which I think is a really good idea. But ultimately, procurement processes are unnecessarily cumbersome and we have to unpack that and make it better. One of the great things that's happened over the last 5 years is the procurement team has been looking at benefits-driven procurement, or social procurement is what it's commonly known as. And we have put a much greater emphasis on local. And we did that before the tariffs came in. So we're in a much better position than most other municipalities, but we need to ramp it up some more. And when I think about the amount of technology we use and the types of systems we use that are like the really big companies, with programs that don't necessarily work, like every day, oh my God, I'm going to say this out loud. Every day, I swear at Outlook. Every day. Because there's something about it. Yeah, because something about it doesn't work. And, we have another system called eScribe where all our stuff is uploaded. Like, my life is eScribe. That's what I have to look at on the weekend to get ready for the council meeting on Tuesday. And when eScribe decides that they're going to do an update on the weekend, wow, that's not very good for me. But what if we have local talent that could actually serve our needs and we shopped it out to all of you and you could meet the needs we have? That's what I want to see ultimately. But I need at least 7 friends, hopefully 14, that see it the same way and we can all give direction to administration to do something that's more nimble and responsive.
Yeah, okay. Shifting gears now a little bit to the ideal city or the smart city. Mayor Gondek, we share a brief, but yours much more decorated and interesting than mine, but brief background in sociology, and specifically in urban sociology in your case. And so I'm curious, as you look at not only building a city for like an economic sector, but for talent who craves vibrancy and culture. What else do you look at when we look at going on trade missions to Toronto and saying, hey guys, this place really stinks. Calgary's awesome. We can't just have good paying jobs, right? Like we also need, Gerardo said, I have to mention bike lanes. he wants to make sure we save the bike lanes, but we kind of, do need bike lanes. And so how do you think about saving? Yes. Yeah, there you go. I walked in, he said, mention the bike lanes. And I said, all right, I got you. So long as you, don't punch this one in. Yeah. But so how do you think about building a city for creative talent and folks who are highly skilled, but want to come and move to Calgary and all the other amenities that they'll be looking for?
I think it's fascinating for me that I never actually thought I was going to be mayor. It's not like I didn't wake up when I was 5 and go, I'm going to be the mayor of Calgary. It was this weird thing that happened because of my journey in all of the various careers that I had, and then finally understanding that city building is something I love so much. And being a sociologist affords me the opportunity to understand that cities are actually the intersection of people and places. So, the planners will look at how you design the city and the sociologists will look at how people live in the city, but I think it's that happy middle where place and people come together that's the most important thing. And I like to bring it down to a very basic level of what do you need to get through your daily routine. So Tishman Speyer is a massive real estate company. They like 30 Rock is theirs, and they have major projects all over the world. And the big revelation they had about 10 years ago is this idea of a concierge in their buildings. So whether it's a mixed-use building, commercial or residential, have a concierge service. And it took off. And now you see it. So you see so many residential buildings where you have a concierge that's able to, help you do the things that help you get you through your daily routine. But like for average people too, what you want to be able to do is drop your kid off at daycare or school, get to work, get to your lab appointment, maybe get to your dental appointment, get home, get some groceries along the way, make dinner, and then get the kids off to whatever sport they're in. Like, that's kind of an average life. And what if that was all actually concentrated in one place so you didn't have to drive all over the city to do all of those things, right? Like, that would be the ideal life. And so when we look at a place like downtown, where so many of those amenities are already here, you have proximity to the things that you need to be near. You could walk to work, you could bike to work, you could scoot to work. You have all of those options that are available to you. So living downtown is an incredibly attractive thing. But you need to have grocery stores too, and we're finally realizing that. You know, we're making sure that we are addressing those things. We used to have bylaws that didn't allow you to have any other uses except office-type uses in the buildings that we had. And so when someone creative came in and said, I want to put my dental office in that building, we went, slow down, son, you can't do that. You're not allowed to because of the bylaw. But there was a very creative team at the city who came up with this great idea that started allowing uses like that and started expediting them and unpacking why we couldn't do them. We couldn't do them because you needed X number of parking spaces. But if the people that are going to use them have already parked somewhere, then maybe that use makes sense. That's why now you're seeing more cool things. Like, does anybody have a dog? Just a couple of dog people in here. Has anybody ever heard of Petropolitan? Yeah, so Petropolitan is at the base of the Calgary Tower. My dog Smokey goes there from time to time for doggy daycare, and if we go on a vacation, he stays there in his little condo. But would you ever have envisioned having doggy daycare and boarding downtown at the base of the Calgary Tower? No, we would have gone, that's never going to work. They're killing it. And we've got all kinds of other uses down here now that we didn't have because we started thinking about how people live their life and what they need. I think one of the biggest things that we're missing downtown is schools. Wouldn't it be great if you and the kids could actually hop on the bus or take a couple of bikes together or get in the car and drop the kids off at school, you go to work, you pick them up after? It'd be pretty amazing. And I'm talking about families, and I know some of you may not have families yet, but that's something that you might want to think about. Like, if you set down roots in downtown and you never want to leave, I've got to be able to provide you with all of those amenities. So that's what I'm incredibly focused on. How do you get through your daily routine to have the best life possible so we can attract talent and keep it here?
Cool. That's awesome. I'm just picturing sort of me, puffy coat on, my little dog, just walking everywhere. It's perfect. Which leads into my next question for everyone, and this is a question for everyone. The clouds sort of part, and you're left with sort of a city floating on a cloud, and it's the ideal Calgary. Clayton, I'm going to start with you, but what does that look like? What does it have that we don't have now, or what have we turned the volume up? What have we turned the volume down on? What's the perfect Calgary look like to you?
I think it's maybe some things that we can't see. Like, it's great that our company was bought by a large U.S. private equity firm, but it'd be great if there was some more capital in Canada as well. It's things like talent. We're doing great. And, I think there's a ton of machine learning talent. We're really excited about building out the AI Center of Excellence. But we're actually having a hard time finding talent on the commercial side. So I think there's probably an opportunity with a whole bunch of tech companies to build out sales talent. And that's another way of raising capital is get more customers.
Yeah.
So maybe these are both kind of capital related, but maybe they're kind of things that you don't see. And that's just from the perspective of someone who was trying to build like an early stage business. But I think those things can really help propel new companies and then, just kind of continue to do what we're doing too. Like Derek and I started out in platform. Yeah. That was invaluable. And a lot of the programs in the city, whether it's Intergen or CVL, or there's a number that, that are out there, keep doing more of that because it's obviously very helpful.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just going to wear my crystal hat.
Yeah, please do.
And it's 3 things. Imagine if Calgary was the most entrepreneurial, dog-friendly, and healthiest city in the world. There's so much that would go into all three of those things, so they would probably feed each other. But those would be my priorities if I were here, I'm just saying.
All right. You should run. There's an election. No.
See you on that brief.
Mayor Gondek, I want to hear your ideal city too.
Well, wish number one is that we have a proper green line that connects the north to the south and is underground in downtown, so we're not destroying downtown. That's like job one.
Yeah, do that. Keep parking the line. Public transit.
The other thing would have to be public safety in two ways. I want people to feel safe no matter where they are. And when people see others in positions of crisis or vulnerability, sometimes you feel unsafe as well. So what I really wish is that we could figure out a way to help people that are struggling with mental health and addictions and are in positions of trauma and crisis, and help them go somewhere where they're supported and they're cared for and they can get out of that kind of a situation. And the third thing kind of feeds from that. I want everybody in Calgary to be able to live with dignity in a home with a roof over their head. And I want you all to remember this every day, not because I'm trying to guilt you, but because we need to hold this near and dear. We wake up in a private room, in a bed that was comfortable and warm, and we go into the washroom and we brush our teeth and we have our shower and we get dressed and we come out of our home and then go out into the world. There are people that don't have that. They're doing all those very private, personal things out in public. And that can't be the way that our city continues to grow. We have to take care of people that are in those tough positions. So my top three wishes is just to have everybody be able to live a great life with dignity.
Yeah, that's good. All three of those answers, by the way, were so much better than what Gerardo was going to say. He was just going to say more bike lanes. He was just going to say one big bike lane.
That was very well said.
There you go. There you go. Cool. That's it. That's it for me. Maybe one round of applause and we'll flip it up to audience Q&A. Yeah, that was awesome. I'm going to check the time. Cool. We got a few minutes, so hopefully we can get to 3. And I'm sorry if we aren't able to get to all of yours. I'll start over here. And Josh, we'll go to you next.
Awesome. First question. I'm so excited. Thank you all for sharing. I think all of you had great insight into what the city will be like. So I'm a born and raised Calgarian. So I've been here all my life, and there's a reason why I'm still here. But as someone who's seen it for the past 25 years, there's a lot of changes happening that I don't like. But I'm not here to blame or anything like that. I just want open discussion. And you mentioned, Mayor, that homelessness is something that ideally you'd like to see these people have a comfortable place to live just like everyone else. And that's something that I've seen increase over the past couple of years. And I'm wondering how you're planning on addressing that and helping the housing crisis.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate the question. I think there's 2 components to that. There's affordable housing and supportive housing, and then there's market-based housing. So we have to make sure that we don't just think that people who are struggling with something, whatever it might be a physical disability, might be a mental health crisis, might be any of those things. It's not okay to just give them somewhere to live. They're going to need supports to help them out. And so you've got to have that kind of supportive housing. There's some people that are spending far more than 30% of their income on housing, so they need income supplements, they need reduced rent, they need below market housing. So that's what we need to look at. But we also need to make sure that people who are able to afford rent or purchase in market-based housing have that opportunity. So we created a housing strategy called Home is Here that addresses all of those things. And so some of the initiatives that we've launched with that, a very simple one, if you will. Anybody who wants to build a secondary suite in their existing home, we've provided an incentive because we think that increases the amount of housing we have in the city very quickly. We are doing modular builds now. So we have a wholly owned subsidiary called Attainable Homes, And if you're driving down 6th, like roughly 6th and 10th, you will see that they've got 2 builds happening right now. One is a traditional stick build on the north side, and on the south side is a modular build. And it's a partnership with ATCO. That project for housing, I think it's about 75 or 80 units, will go up in 8 weeks. The other one took almost 2 years. So we're trying to be innovative in how quickly we're delivering housing. We just announced a program, I think it was 2 days ago, with Indigenous communities where we are creating housing for Indigenous peoples that is culturally appropriate and sensitive to their specific needs, because a lot of Indigenous people live in multi-generational families. And there's an understanding that it takes a lot of people to take care of that family. So we're making some pretty active moves as a city. We're also divesting ourselves of city-owned land that we don't need anymore. We are offering it to not-for-profit affordable housing providers. So we're trying to be as creative as we can. And we can't do it without a strong partnership with the private sector, because they're the ones that actually do the builds. So we work very hard to understand what their needs are. We advocate with Calgary Construction Association that we need more people in trades. We work actively with the federal and provincial governments to show them the need and expedite housing. The downtown conversion program that we have funded has allowed us to create more units downtown. There's going to be about 2,000 people, families that will be able to live in these units that didn't exist before. And because of that incentive, some of those buildings are able to offer 30% of their units at 20 to 30% below market rates. So those are some of the examples of what we're doing.
Good, absolutely.
Yeah, getting back to tech. So the growth of the Calgary tech ecosystem, question to each panelist. If you had to pick one metric that you were going to look to that serves to whether we're doing a good job, is that number of jobs? Is it number of head offices? Is it number of dollars returned to investors? Is it number of people named Clayton that we convinced to move from Toronto to Calgary? What is the one metric for success there?
What you said. Well, oh man, we don't have one metric at OSIF. I don't know if it's as simple as that, but if we had to choose, I would say measuring the talents, upskilling, and attraction.
I'd say return on capital, like that is indicative of everything else, right? So if there's exits or there's big wins, that means people have been employed and people have been innovating, and that's the ultimate outcome, I think. Whether it's public capital or private capital, I think that's a big yardstick. So maybe going along with that, the number of exits, but capital return.
I'm going to be super nerd and go back to the origin of your question, which is basically how do you define success? And so success as the concept that is hard to measure. How do you operationalize it? And I think everything that you mentioned is a way to measure success. And so if I'm actually going to operationalize the concept that you presented, it has to be all of those variables blended together to define what success means. So I can't pick one. I think it's a combo.
Oh, Christian. Who we got? Bring it on right here. You got.
Hello, I've also lived in Calgary for most of my life, and I recently came back from studying abroad. And my first question that I have to ask is, as someone who grew up in the suburbs, I was involved a lot in the arts. And obviously technology has integrated itself in the way that we view entertainment and we interact entertainment. So my question to the mayor is, are there initiatives or are there programs that integrate the growth of this sector? Because though I think agriculture and these other sectors are quite important, I also think that the arts isn't important. And it also brings back to your point about how do we integrate people who maybe are struggling or need a path forward into this sector? Because I know for me personally, I've grown a lot with integrating myself in the arts.
It's an amazing question. And I have to say that municipal governments have been notoriously bad at investing in the creative sector and arts. Especially in Calgary, we relied very heavily for decades on the energy sector to fund anything that was arts related. And that's why you saw some of the big energy sector names on theaters and, all of the initiatives that were going on in the arts. And for some reason, arts was kind of treated like a charity when it's not. It is absolutely a sector of the economy that is a critical part of who we are. And so when it comes to the arts and you look at technology, during COVID, the arts sector was poised to be decimated, the performing arts in particular, right? Because you couldn't go to a production. But they leveraged technology to be able to broadcast to all of you the productions that they were going to do. So tech and the arts and creative sector are necessarily entwined. If you think of music, the type of production that can be done now is reliant on technology. So I don't think you can remove one from the other. I think the success of the creative sector hinges on tech being table stakes. Sure, you still need the people, and it is that raw talent that the individual brings that's important, but enabling that to be even stronger is done through tech. So I think there's ways that we can marry the two things together. As a local government, we have made a lot of investments into the arts. We have provided the building for Contemporary Calgary to be a public art space. We have invested in Arts Commons and Glenbow. With the help of philanthropists, we know that people will have access to the arts for a very long time. If you think about the fact that early childhood development is incredibly successful when kids are exposed to the arts. When you think about newcomer settlement patterns, when people have access to the arts, they feel a greater sense of belonging in the new place that they have come to. All of those things matter. And so for me, as someone who's in local government, I think arts and the creative sector is a necessary part of the economy. I think it's absolutely the soul of who we are, and I continue to invest in it. And I don't think that tech is separate from arts and culture. I don't think tech is separate from anything, really. I think it's table stakes, like I said. You can't do great things without technology. And so although we are gathered as a sector today, you reach out into every other place.
Yeah, sorry. Cool. Okay, well, this was a lot of fun. This was great. Thank you guys so much. A round of applause for these hits. I think, like I said, we're pseudo celebrating our 1 year anniversary today, and we wouldn't be able to do this without the support of our sponsors, but also without the support of you guys and the attendees who come out to our events, because our sponsors really wouldn't care about us if you didn't come. So thank you guys so much for coming, on that note, if you're seeing some of our upcoming panels are boring, please tell me, because that's critical feedback for us. We want to make sure that our programming is super interesting. So next week, we have the CEO of DC Bank. Him and I had a call last week, and he's a character. So if anything, it's going to be fun. And then if you hate me as a moderator, on September 18th, Leah is going to be moderating. Yes. You guys were so relieved. You're like, yes, please, please. She's launching season 3 of her podcast on September 18th. The Founders Mindset. She interviews founders to get into their psychology. It's like a little therapy session. So come back for September 18th. Guys, we got this place for at least the next couple hours. There's some awesome people in this room. Gerardo is ready to take your drinks and talk bike lanes with you. So yes, thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, that was great. That was a lot of fun.